Hello and welcome to the Daring and Mighty podcast with your host, Katie Phillips. Today, I want to explore the topic of identity with you. I invite you to take a moment before we even dive into this conversation and ask yourself, who am I? Who do I desire to become? Who do I desire to be? How often do you ask yourself questions like that? And I think for so many of us, we don't ask those questions because, well, first of all, it takes a lot of courage. We don't know the how to get to who you're becoming necessarily or who you desire to be. Often the how of that eludes us. And what it might take of you and what might have to change for you and in your life can at first feel so uncertain, so unknown, that the fear takes over and blocks us from even asking ourselves this powerful question. Who am I becoming? Who do I desire to be? Who am I becoming? Who am I desiring to be? That can shatter everything that we know about ourselves, everything that the world we have created around ourselves knows us to be, all the people we're in connection with, who they believe we are in the world, the roles that we play. It potentially could shatter so much. And it will shatter a lot, depending on the degree to which you have been living in alignment with the truth of who you are. I remember when I first ever asked myself this question, and I was about 35. And I had no idea who I was. I just knew how to be a good girl. I knew how to perform roles and functions in the world that were expected of me. Don't get me wrong, I didn't have a bad life. I'd made some questionable decisions and I was definitely in some difficult relationships. And if you heard my introduction to what the Daring and Mighty podcast is about, I went into some detail there around that time of my life. And it was a scary moment to actually stop and ask myself, who am I? Who am I without the roles? Who am I without the expectations? Who am I without the family conditioning, the societal patterns of behavior that I've learned are acceptable? Who am I without the conditioning, and who do I want to be instead? What has to shift? Two key things shifted in my life when I asked that question. One was the relationship I was in. I was engaged to be married and we had a child together. That had to come to an end. That relationship did not serve the identity of the woman I knew in my soul I needed to become. And it was a healthier version of me, a more honest, authentic version of me as well. And the other thing that shifted was my career. Suddenly, the role that I played, which was predominantly ensuring that somebody else's brand was being perceived in the light they wanted it to be perceived in, because I used to work in PR, I worked in advertising, and I worked in events and sponsorship and hospitality. None of that was important to me anymore. And I realized I could do it. I did it very well. I made a great career out of it. Until I realized it wasn't meaningful to me. It didn't fulfill me in the way I needed to be fulfilled. And it was my own break down to break through. I'm sure you've heard people speak of that before. It was my dark night of the soul when I had to wake up to myself and realize I'd been living like a puppet to my conditioning, and it was time to discover, how did Katie want to do life? That's when I realized I couldn't carry on doing even the work that I was doing, because it was it was a performance. It didn't matter that I was good at it. What mattered more was what would fulfill my soul. And that became a question of, why am I here on this planet? It was a deeply existential experience. Why am I here on this planet? I will never forget, actually, to slightly digress. I had a role. I used to work on the Olympic Games circuit. So I worked at several different Olympic Games, summer and winter. And I would work for the sponsorship hospitality team of one of the main sponsors on the games. And I had lots of different roles inside of that over the years. And one year I was working on the London Summer Olympics. Fantastic position, fantastic experience to be involved in an Olympic Games. Really, once in a lifetime. And I remember sitting in on a meeting. The client was Cadbury chocolate. And we spent a long time debating the PMS purple of the Cadbury brand. And I remember thinking, there's got to be more to life than this conversation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that conversation, and what we created and the experiences we created for people during that London Olympics was phenomenal and very exciting. And did Katie Phillips really care about the PMS color of the Cadbury purple enough to spend probably a solid hour in discussion about it? No. Did I know that I was going to move into the world of transformation coaching and become a self-actualization author? No. That would have been the furthest thing from my mind. The how of that was, I mean, you couldn't make it up how it happened, but I had to break down first before that career path was revealed to me. And it was a scary, scary time. It was a scary time not knowing what my next purposeful career move would be, my professional move. It was a scary time leaving the relationship that I was in, that, I loved him. I loved him, and I loved him as the father of my child. And we were not healthy together. And it put me for several years in a very, very uncertain situation. But what did I have? What did I have that was certain, that was secure, that was safe? I had me. I had me. And even in the uncertainty of so much change in my life, I felt secure in the knowledge that I was living into my values and what was true for me. And not everybody around me understood that. I even lost friends through that process. Not everybody liked who Katie was becoming. But you know who did like who Katie was becoming? Katie. And I will always feel so, so proud of myself for those decisions and many, many other decisions I've made through my life. And I would call them daring and mighty decisions, where I chose to live aligned with the truth of me and not into somebody else's expectations, not to fit a role, not to be who they needed me to be. And we can make these transitions, we can make these choices from a place of love and without drama. that just gets to be a choice. Side note, I learned the without drama piece quite a few years later. I didn't know you could make big life choices without drama. So I lived in drama for a long time. Now, drama isn't a feature of my life, I am very pleased to say. If you caught my last podcast episode, I was speaking about my time very recently that I'm just coming out the other side of, that I have called the sacred void. What I didn't speak to in that episode, and if you didn't catch it, please, I highly recommend that you do, and it will have this conversation make even more sense, this one about identity. What I didn't go into detail on was this piece of identity and how, when you find yourself in your own sacred void, the key piece that comes up is, who are you? Who am I? How do I identify? What are the roles I'm playing? What fits me and suits me, and what doesn't? And what makes the void, a seemingly empty space? It's because we are in the shedding and the letting go of an old identity and moving into a new identity. And the gap in between, that really uncomfortable, uncertain gap, that liminal space, it feels like this black, empty void where you're floating through space sometimes. Sometimes it feels like nothing, and it can be a terrifying, scary experience. While we're letting go of what doesn't serve us and waiting to receive the inspiration of what does, while we're choosing what parts of my identity still fit and feel good for me, and I'm going to bring those forward. What am I going to leave behind? And what am I creating? The space in between, the void. This is where we get to be deeply daring and mighty. This is where we've got to put on our big girl pants and tap into our ovaries. Remember how powerful we are, and lean into deep faith and deep trust that what is on the other side for us is for us. And it's worth the wait, and it's worth the discomfort. I love this topic of identity. It's something that I am working more and more with my clients. It's something that we will be exploring in my upcoming free 5-day experience, Awakened and Aligned. And by the way, I'll leave the link if you want to join us in October for that. And it's absolutely foundational to the work we're doing in my 12-month Be Her group program. It's all around identity. Identity is where it's at. Because you see, at the end of the day, identity, it isn't just who we think we are. It isn't just the roles we play or who other people expect us to be. It's a vibration. It's an energetic vibration. What you're thinking about yourself impacts how you're feeling about yourself. And those two pieces affect whether you're reacting or responding to the world. And the feeling that these thoughts and beliefs and feelings create, the experience of that is, it's an energetic frequency. It's like a bubble surrounding you. If you're watching the video on YouTube of this, you could see me. I'm with my arms, I'm naturally, as I feel into what is identity, I almost feel it as a boundary around me. It's an energetic bubble almost that I sit within. And that frequency, before I even open my mouth, like who I am being in the world is a frequency. And before I even open my mouth, people feel that frequency that surrounds me, that is me. So, this frequency that I am being in the world is either repelling people and opportunities and experiences, or it's attracting them. And it's attracting stuff that I want and stuff that I don't want. Whatever it is attracting, it is attracted because it's an energetic match to who I am being, therefore, who I am identifying as. So we have to work with identity to be able to create and call in anything that you want in your life, whether that's financial, whether it's professional, whether it's something to do with relationships. In fact, a perfect example. When I was a single mum, for the first few years of being a single mum, I chose very much to be single. I had my inner work to do. It was a several years of healing and repairing and coming home to myself, remembering who I was, because leading into that, as I just said a few minutes ago, I didn't know who I was. I knew that I needed to know who I was in order to be in a healthy relationship. Otherwise, the relationship I was in was only going to be me kind of offsetting my identity into him. So I would look to him for my happiness. I'd look to him for my purpose. I'd look to him to complete me. And that was so unhealthy. I had to heal from codependent patterns of behavior where I needed him to be okay so that I could be okay. Something I learned. I was expert at codependency. I learned it from my beautiful parents, bless their hearts. No blame. And I'm really grateful for all of those experiences and lessons because it has made me who I am today and the work I get to do now. When I was ready to date, I would say there was about 3 years there that I was so ready and he wasn't coming in. And it was so frustrating because I'd done so much healing work. I knew who I was. I was clear on the kind of relationship that I wanted. But I hadn't yet decided that I was truly worthy of an extraordinary relationship. I came to realize in those final 3 years, despite as much work as I'd done, as much healing as I'd done, I still hadn't aligned with the identity of a woman who deserved healthy, lasting love. And the re-identification of myself became key to calling in that man that I desired to be with that I hadn't yet met. I had to be in the world a vibrational match for the kind of relationship I wanted to have. And one of the key pieces around that was I needed to know how I would feel when I'd met him. And I knew that I would feel at home. I knew that when I met him, being with him, my nervous system would be relaxed. I would be comfortable in my own skin. I could just be Katie, the woman I finally discovered and got to know and fallen deeply in love with in those previous years. I got to just be her with him. And that felt like being at home for me. And so to step even more into the identity of a woman that felt at home in her relationship, my work was to create the experience of feeling at home every single day in my own body, feeling safe in my own body and secure with me even more, so that I was that vibrational match for that experience, the experience of being with a man that made me feel at home. I had to create that first. That is basic identity work. Midlife throws up another question mark over identity. Perhaps you've got children growing up and leaving home. My 18-year-old son is actually flying back from London tonight. I'm excited to see him. He's been gone for a month. I'm not quite an empty nester yet, and I've just experienced a month without him. Who am I when I haven't got my son living here with me? This is something a lot of midlife women are asking themselves. Who am I when my child flies the nest and starts their own life? Maybe we don't know. And maybe that's to be rediscovered and redefined. And right there is a little mini void, moving away from the identity of parenting full-time under the same roof into a new identity. And there's a grieving that comes with a change of identity, no matter what stage of life we're at. And in midlife, there is grieving. You know, our identity, it might be to do with our body. You know, I just mentioned empty nesting, that's one piece, but our body has changed enormously. It is changing enormously. There's a grieving of our youth and what we took for granted. And then we're in the messy middle of, well, who am I then? Who am I becoming? That's the void. Who do I desire to be in my 50s, in my 60s, in my 70s? I actually have a vision board for my retirement years. I have images of women with fantastic gray hair doing yoga, and homes with there's a home with a dock and pelicans, and these older women look so fit and healthy and vibrant, and they're hiking and they're out in the world and traveling. I created that vision board because I realized, and this is actually a few years ago, I realized this, I was scared of retirement. I had beliefs running of what that would mean for me, and it was all aligned with scarcity and illness and not enoughness. And I thought, well, that's not a healthy place to move towards. And that's the thing with identity. When we get conscious to it, we can consciously create who we're becoming. If I did not stop and look at the fear voices in my head that were telling me, when you get old, and I was thinking like in my 70s and 80s, you suffer, you're in pain, life feels hard, you don't have enough, you're at the bottom of the pile, no one notices you or cares about you anymore. I had all sorts of scary beliefs about that age and stage of life. And if I didn't address it, that's what I would be moving towards, because that would be my vibrational match. My energy frequency would be attracting situations and circumstances and people that would make that experience in 20, 30 years and a reality for me. That's not very daring and mighty. So a few years ago, and I'm trying to think when I did this, it must have been about 8 years ago. So I was, you know, sort of late 40s. I created a vision board for 70-plus-year-old Katie, because that's what I'm moving towards. Healthy, living, feeling strong, feeling vital, feeling supported in every possible way. And so that's my invitation to you today. My invitation to you is always going to be to live your version of a daring and mighty life. And that requires a daring and mighty identity. It requires so much courage, because there is a shedding and a letting go of who you were, and that empty space while you wait to tune into the woman that you desire to become. And this is what I'm doing in my own life and my movement just recently through the sacred void. I am kind of popping out the other side with so much more clarity around my identity at this stage of life and what I am creating going forward. It's not the end. It's the beginning of something new. I get to decide that. You get to decide, what are you at the beginning of? What is new for you? What do you want to create? And give yourself the grace, love yourself enough to take the time and space you need to grieve what needs grieving, to let go what's ready to be let go, so that you can step into that abundant space of possibility. So I ask you, what are the identities that you have outgrown? What do you want to let go of? Who are you becoming? What are you creating? They're really daring and mighty questions. And if you feel courageous enough to let me know your answers, please do. I would love to hear how this episode has landed for you. This episode really is just scratching the surface on what identity is and how we can play with identity and how we can expand and evolve into our next level identity. It's not about saying there's anything wrong or anything needs fixing. It's about becoming. Who are we becoming? So let me know how this has landed for you. I can't wait to hear. Please share it with any friends that you think would find this episode helpful. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please do. And that just leaves me to say, you are daring and mighty.